Did you listen to the 2 hours and 40-minute argument before the court yesterday, as I did?
I did not listen to the entire argument, but I did jump in for various portions of it. And I think my take is not going to surprise you as being, one that definitely is going to leave the opponents of the former president very disappointed. I will say that I did have a good day because my Washington football franchise took Jaden Daniels and didn't manage to screw up in some way what should have been an obvious pick in my conclusion. But when it comes to the president and the former president and his situation, look, the frustrations of all the people who had hoped to effectively dynamite his candidacy with this kind of long fuse delay where they start the fire, they get the people who are all supporters of his ginned up within the context of the primary, and then it goes off before you actually have time to elect him or judge him for re-election as president. Their whole plans have been thrown into a cocked hat. They just have not been able to deliver on any of these different cases. And I think that's why you are going to hear increasing calls as we've seen, I think, in a lot of different circles of questioning the legitimacy of the court from the same people who say that you can't do that. Otherwise, it's a risk of anti-democratic behavior or something like that.
Oh, Jamie Raskin was making that argument last night. What a moron. Okay, I want to play for you.
Yes.
He's just a moron. This is the key part of the argument for me. Amy Coney Barrett at the 2 hour and 20 mark. And I'm not going to play the whole thing for you, just the start of it. Let's play the start of cut number 5.
Let me ask you about state prosecutions, because if the president has some kind of immunity that's implicit in Article 2, then that immunity would protect him from state prosecutions as well.
Stop right there. Ben, that's the killer app. She waited. Yep. She sat there quietly until 2 hours and 20 minutes into a 2 hour and 40-minute argument and then put the knife in. Otherwise, a.k.a. she's talking about Alvin Bragg and Fannie Willis.
Exactly. And that's the kind of thing that I think, you have these types of moments in Supreme Court hearings where there's just one argument that wins the day that just pops out. And we've seen this happen before in various cases, and I think it fell to Justice Barrett to do that the other day. And I just don't think that there's any question that we can't have a situation where former presidents are facing this type of situation over and over again. We can't, Hugh. It's not a functional country. It's not a functional republic if we have these types of questions. I remember when there were people who wanted to, throw George W. Bush in jail over war crimes and that kind of thing.
Oh, well, listen to this, Ben. I'm going to play you a little bit of cut number 8. Michael Dreeben, counsel for Justice Department, is engaging with Sam Alito. Cut number 8.
It is correct, Justice Alito, but I think that we should also consider the history of this country. As members of the court have observed, it's baked into the Constitution that any president knows that they are exposed to potential criminal prosecution. My friend says after impeachment and conviction, we don't read the impeachment judgment clause that way, but it's common ground that all former presidents have known that they could be indicted and convicted. And Watergate cemented that understanding. The Watergate smoking gun tape involved President Nixon and H.R. Haldeman talking about and then deciding to use the CIA to give a bogus story to the FBI to shut down a criminal investigation.
I mean, Mr. Sauer and others have identified events in the past where presidents have engaged in conduct that might have been charged as a federal crime, and you say, well, no, that's not really true. This is page 42 of your brief. So what about President Franklin D. Roosevelt's decision to intern Japanese Americans during World War II? Couldn't that have been charged under...
All right, stop right there. It is fascinating to me. It's constitutional bingo, because they name every major case. I've been teaching con law since 1996. They name Marbury, McCullough. They named Korematsu.
You're getting so much out of this, Hugh. I mean, I know. Listen, as I'm listening to this, it's like all of my friends who've been teaching these things for years. This is their opportunity to nerd out
I geeked out on Special Report last night. I totally geeked out because it was so wonderful. But then they began arguing about what the Attorney General did and didn't advise FDR, and it just brought home your point, which is we can't operate this way. The president's got to have a zone of immunity that's pretty big, but not complete. You know, you can't shoot somebody in front of the White House.
You can't shoot someone in front of the White House, and that's the kind of thing where this is stuff that's gone from the realm of hypotheticals to the realm of reality. And I think that Democrats and opponents of the former president are going to be very disappointed to have to operate within reality, especially the likes of Raskin. And so that, look, at the end of the day, the voters are going to decide the future of the former president. They are going to be able to make the decision, I think, in the absence of anything other than perhaps the conclusion of this hush money case. And that's something that I think is completely irrelevant to every single voter. It does not matter. It does not change the opinion of one American.
But let's go there, Ben. Let's go there. I want to ask you this question. He's trapped in the courtroom. His numbers are skyrocketing in the Bloomberg state polls. Like he's up 7 and 8 points in Nevada and Arizona. He's up 10 in North Carolina. Has Bragg helped him? Has he hurt him? It's an obscene thing, but what do you think?
This is the theory that, I know that I think you and others have come around to, which is that he is, by being distracted from his own campaign, it's actually helped him.
Yes.
Because it's one of these situations where he's not mucking about in ways that can hurt him with voters. Instead, voters have, at the remove, they have essentially come around to the idea that the economy was better under this guy. Yeah, it seemed chaotic in the moment. The media played up chaos in the moment, but it actually was more stable than the world as it currently is. And so because of that, I think that a lot of them are voters who, frankly, were Trump voters who became Biden voters or essentially stayed home, who are going to return to Trump again because they believe that things were better underneath him.
And Ben, nobody saw the numbers yesterday. Stagflation is back and it's renamed Bidenomics. 1.6% GDP growth. Inflation is stuck. Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they're doing fine. The AI people, everybody else is screwed, including you and me if we got to go to the grocery store and you've got small kids. So you're really screwed.
Oh, yeah. No, are you kidding? Milk, eggs, and butter are just like driving me nuts. 4 more years, pause. I mean, it's
4 more years, pause.
It's madness, Hugh. And,
do you know, Mark Thiessen told me in the green room last night that the White House lied on the transcript. Instead of saying 4 more years, pause, they said 4 more years, inaudible. They lied.
That's great, inaudible. No, the truth is, and this is why, you referenced this, Economist piece that came out last week that dug into the voters, the actual swing voters who are swinging back toward Trump, and the indication is that they are a lot of people with young families, meaning they are very attuned to the exact things that are costing more and more, and that's something that I think is impossible for this White House to overcome, and they don't have a plan to overcome it. Their plan is simply to spend more money, spend more money, spend more money. And it's not going to change. And it's not going to change between now and November. And I think it's going to be why people send Biden packing. And I think he's going to be remembered, Hugh, as being an extreme disappointment as president, one of the lowest ranked presidencies, because ultimately he didn't deliver on any of the actual promises that he ran on. He delivered a completely different agenda than he promised. And he left his party and he left the Democratic coalition more broken than ever in terms of the ways that he approached foreign policy that disappointed so many people.
You are the key demo. Young parents, long been my belief that young parents drive election. What is driving your thought process other than eggs, milk, and the other staples?
Well, I think that what's really driving our thought process, right now is the difference between living in blue states versus red states. And just the experience difference is gigantic in terms of the way that you can expect your kids to be taught, the way that you can rely on just sort of the natural gravity of the people around you to be one that is neighborly and that is honorable and that is going to be something that's going to be a benefit to the children versus one where they are indoctrinated in really, an agenda that frankly is far more widespread than I think people truly appreciate, though that's changed thanks to the revelations, I think, of a lot of parents during the COVID period. And that's something that is very much on my mind. And it's one of the reasons I think you see people voting with their feet, even if they are of the blue kind of persuasion. They would rather live in these states and in these suburbs and in these communities that are outside of their normal political affinity. And I think that tells you something. It tells you, when people can make fun of, sort of Florida man all you want, but guess what? People want to be Florida man.
That is so interesting, Ben, and I'll tell you why it resonates. Last night in the green room, Grover Norquist, who I have known well since 1974, but I don't see very often. Grover came into the green room. He was leaving Fox Business, and we were doing special report. And Grover and I were talking about how red states are going to win the competition because they're changing their education system and they're lowering their taxes. They're getting education choice and they're dropping their taxes to zero. But we're kind of like Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler. Did you ever see that movie?
Yes.
Okay, the Grover and I are old, beat-up warriors of politics that go back to Reagan days. And, we just can't keep doing this. Young people like you are going to decide this, and I think you're right. I think it's red states are winning.
Yeah, and I think that's the overall trajectory that I think that we are on as a nation, meaning that, there are people who are currently in a lot of different blue communities in blue states who just understand that, their tax dollars are not going to what they want them to go to. Their kids aren't getting the level of education that they want to, meaning, they're getting indoctrination as opposed to, actual usable information and skills. And, frankly, you look at something like what's gone on these campuses in the last week or two, and people don't aspire. My wife, was a graduate at the top of her class at Columbia. People don't aspire to that anymore. They do not see that as being the brass ring. It's not something that families are sort of talking about as being, well, I really hope that my kid grows up and goes to the Ivy League.
Oh, God, no.
Instead, they're saying, we want to be in a program where, our 529, our investment goes toward a school that's going to have a great program at a state school or something along those lines. You don't have that same aspiration to be in blue cities and blue communities and blue education systems that you used to. And I think that the left doesn't really understand what they've lost over the last several years by going as crazy as they have, as woke as they have, and as victim-focused as they have.
Oh, and the MSNBC doom loop that they watch just drives them. Yeah. Okay, time for a quiz. If we were playing Jeopardy with Karine Jean-Pierre, Kamala Harris, and Xavier Becerra, who would lose?
I don't think that anyone can go wrong with picking Kamala out of the three of those. I think there's no way. The knowledge level on that one is just so low. But Sarah might know a few things just by being an attorney. What he doesn't know anything about, when it comes to his job in the administration is anything related to policy. He just doesn't. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen the video of him, testifying on Capitol Hill. He just doesn't know how anything works.
I'm working on a test for new guests. After watching the stupid kids and the stupid faculty members at Columbia, at my alma mater, at USC, at Ohio State, they're all dumb. And the combination of ideology and ignorance is lethal, Mark Thiessen added. And don't forget, supreme self-confidence. It's just lethal. So, Ben, here's what I'm working on. I want to ask these protesters, one, tell me something about the Ottoman Empire. What do you know? Number two, tell me something about the British Mandate. And number three, what was Rome up to in 70 A.D.? Is that a fair set of three questions? And do you want to venture what you would answer to that?
Well, I mean, I think that's definitely a fair set of questions. I'm not sure that I can venture an answer here, only because I've been up since 4 a.m. with my.
Oh no!
I'd prefer to take this test without that defect. But what I can obviously, tell you is that, the experience I think that I've had in terms of being around a lot of these Columbia students and the like, is actually that it's more frightening the more that they don't know about their subject matter. Meaning that if you have someone who is a student of art history, for instance, and you try to have a conversation with them about Bosch or about El Greco or something along those lines, then they don't know anything about it. They don't actually know anything about their own field. And so I think, to be honest, that the indictment of these students is that they don't know the thing that they're paying to learn about.
And wasn't Columbia supposed to be the original core curriculum?
Yeah,
Megan,
it was.
Yeah,
it was.
Aren't they supposed to be smart about Western Civ?
Well, one would think so, but I think another thing that I think a lot of them don't know or don't talk about is Dwight Eisenhower. His role in Columbia. That's just not something that I think that any of them are aware of. And look, here's what this comes down to. When you think about something like NATO, if you don't understand the reason that NATO exists, if you don't understand that we were locked in to what felt like a 30-year rotating, increasing war that would decimate more and more of the population as it expanded, as technology improved, et cetera, and that breaking that was key to Ike's approach to post-war, everything that he was trying to achieve, that this was a monumental achievement and that we shouldn't take it for granted, then you can believe really stupid things, and you can believe them on the right or on the left about the importance of NATO and what it means to us. We're obviously speaking on the 75th anniversary of it, and it's one of these things that I think is lost in terms of any kind of student understanding, and yet it's fundamental to understanding the world.
If they don't get Ike and NATO, they're not going to get anything. One last story, Ben. The story broke this morning that the M1 tanks that we gave Ukraine have to be withdrawn from the front line because it turns out they're vulnerable to drones. That changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And I think that, unfortunately, we have time and again, when it comes to what we have provided them, it has not been up to snuff. It has not been aimed at actually achieving victory. It's just been enough to keep things going. And that's such a mistake. It's something that's the opposite of what we should be doing. We should have been trying from day one to seek an ending to this war as quickly as possible. And that meant more material. It meant more resources. It meant the things that they were asking for from day one. And unfortunately, we didn't do it. And the Biden
meant
administration
A-10s.
decided to slow walk all of this.
If Lindsey Graham had his way, we would have sent them A-10s, trained them how to use A-10s, and the Russians would be running away at this point.